Welcome to Building My Legacy podcast. This podcast is designed for leaders and entrepreneurs who want to leave a legacy and will provide strategies that focus upon key elements for legacy creation, determining your desired impact and its benefit, increasing your legacy's reach by engaging key stakeholders, planning, prioritizing, and executing. Here's your host, Dr. Lois Sonstegard.
Welcome, everybody, to today's Building My Legacy podcast. I have with me today Nicole Hamzeloo. She is a digital marketing specialist and works with particularly women entrepreneurs who are wanting to grow and scale their business. And part of why I think she's interesting for those of you who may be listening and looking at building your legacy is that next step often does involve marketing and digital marketing in particular. And many of us, as we have moved up in our careers, have had other people manage those aspects. And so we don't necessarily think about the pieces that go into that. And so Nicole comes out of a corporate digital marketing and background. She decided that she could have more impact by developing her own business for working with entrepreneurs in their digital marketing. So, Nicole, I'm going to let you carry forward from here with what got you into this, and let's then go from there to why, who is it that you target and why?
Yeah, thank you. So first off, how I got into this, like you mentioned, I have a background in marketing and media. I've worked for startups and media agencies in the corporate sense. And they were just, again, I learned a lot from them, but it wasn't really the lifestyle that I wanted. I did not feel like the 9-to-5 life was really very conducive for me. I felt like it was a little constricting. I wanted more independence. I felt like I could be doing a lot more instead of kind of the menial, tedious tasks that were given to me and to the more entry-level employees. And so I knew that I could create a much bigger impact. I knew that I could have a lot more freedom and autonomy and independence by starting my own business. And so when I started looking into what I wanted to be doing and into the entrepreneurial space, I found the coaching world and specifically business coaching. And I knew that a lot of people who were business coaches didn't even have necessarily a business background, and they didn't have maybe the experience or the perspective that I had. And so I decided that I thought that that was the best avenue for me to go into because I do have, a business degree. I've worked for these startups and agencies, and I have a lot of experience in that sense. And I knew I could bring a different perspective to the space. And so who I normally work with are other women entrepreneurs who are also wanting to start their own businesses. So I help them kind of learn the foundational pieces, the sales and marketing portion of things so that they can start their own businesses and then eventually make those full time so that they also don't have to work at their 9-to-5 jobs because they, again, similar to me, they know that they can have more impact. They know that they want more freedom and flexibility in their lives. And that one way to do that is through starting their own business. So I do help them, bring my experience and what I know about business to them to help them grow those.
Nicole, you work with people who are still working at their 9-to-5 job. And why do you want to start while you're still working 9-to-5?
Yeah. So, if you have the opportunity and the option to, it's really great to be able to still have your 9-to-5 job. It does provide obviously a few different challenges because you don't have the time. You don't have as much time to be able to, grow your business, but it does provide a little bit of a security blanket, obviously. It also provides a way for you to fund your business if you need to buy certain things. Obviously with online businesses, it's a little bit easier and a little bit lower price to start out, but it does help you fund and provide that security. And I think, in general, I think starting with a 9-to-5 is just a way for you to really understand what's working and what's not, and it gives you the space and the time to figure things out.
So what do you find are some of the biggest issues people have with getting started when they come to you?
Yeah, so a few different things. Definitely focusing on the wrong things. So a lot of people are so focused on, getting their website set up or setting up all their different accounts and just like thinking they need to grow their following first or something like that. Things like they're waiting too long before they're actually doing the actual business and trying to make money from it. They think that there's a lot more that goes into the setup and waiting around to feel ready or to feel like they have enough people listening to them. But that's not really how you gain clients. It's you have to start selling and you have to start getting the clients. So that's when people are going to start listening to you. It doesn't go the reverse way. Something else that I think a lot of my clients have to kind of wrap their head around or get over, it is a big mindset portion too. So a lot of people lack the confidence, they lack the belief in themselves, and that causes a lot of inconsistency. And so, they'll show up for 1 week, they'll be out there, they'll be very visible, and then they'll turn away for 2 weeks and not show up at all. And then there's that lack of consistency there, which then doesn't build reliability or trust with anyone. And that people aren't going to buy from you. You're not going to get clients if no one trusts you. So, and that comes, I think, back to a belief that they can actually do it. And so I think people think starting a business is so risky and like, how can I be the one to do this? And how am I going to be the one to stand out from everyone else who's doing this and actually make it? Because obviously we hear the statistics of, how many businesses fail. And so I think people have that belief that they probably are going to fail as well, or they won't be able to do it.
So the challenge of confidence, the fear of failure, that's huge for everybody. I think people, even with large corporations, fear that, especially today with all of what's happened with COVID, the uncertain economy, right? So there's a certain fear. Will we make it? Will we survive? Now, obviously, as you are a bigger entity, you have perhaps a larger cash base, but you also have a bigger train that you're pulling. And
Right.
So you don't have that bendability, flexibility, adaptability to what's happening. So as you're looking at that confidence, what is it that really allows people to move forward with a sense of, I can do this?
Yeah, so I think it's always about kind of looking at the long-term goal and what is it that you really want to achieve. So if you can focus not maybe on the here and now and the today, and like maybe things don't really feel really great right now, or they don't feel like they're progressing the way that you would want to, but always keeping in mind what you're working towards and what you ultimately want, which is for a lot of my clients and the people I work with, is that freedom and flexibility to make their life what they really want it to be and not be stuck down, bogged down and stuck in this 9-to-5 life. So always really keeping in mind like the purpose behind why they're doing it. And that can bring up a lot of motivation and keep them persisting even through the times when they do lack belief or confidence.
You target women. What are some of the challenges that women in particularly face?
Yeah, so definitely that confidence, being unsure of themselves, overthinking a lot of things, feeling overwhelmed by a lot of things. They feel, I think, like they need to try all these different things, or there's so many things that they have to be doing, when really you want to start out more simply than that at the very beginning stages. You can grow and you can add more offers, you can add more services or whatever it is to your business, but thinking that they have to do everything all at once. And then also, I think a lot of the things, I have a few mothers too who are working with me. And so not only the challenge of having a 9-to-5, but also the challenge of having a family as well. And then they have even more limited time. And so even though they have a strong motivation to make their business happen, more specifically now for their kids, they do, I think, they put more the family first. And so the business kind of gets left behind and then it's not really worked on. And then again, like I said, you lose that kind of consistency aspect to it, which is important and necessary to grow a business.
So if you're going to say, if you want to be successful, here are 3 things. If you want to go up this trajectory in a smooth way, 3 things you must do. What would you say those 3 things are?
So first, I would say really understanding your audience, who you want to be serving, what you want to be doing uniquely, and how you can solve their specific problems. So really thinking about what it is the problem is that they need solved or want solved. And it's not even about necessarily like they might think they have one problem, but you actually know what their real problem is. So it's, making sure that the content that you present and put out there and the way that you're speaking to your audience is not only targeting what they think their problem is, but helping them solve the real problem behind it as well. So that's number one. Number two is something that I always speak to is consistency. So, and I know I've mentioned it already in this episode or in this podcast, but really you have to be consistent because again, that's what builds the reliability and trust. And especially if you are starting out, you're probably a solo entrepreneur, you're the only one who's showing up. You have to be showing up extremely consistently. Again, that doesn't mean necessarily a lot. It doesn't mean that you have to be posting every single day all the time. It just means that whatever the rate that it is that you are able to post and put out content and show up, you have to keep that consistent, whatever that looks like to you. And then the third thing I would say is building relationships and networking and building connections with people. So whether that be with ideal clients, whether that be with people who you can collaborate with and work with, or whether that be someone who your audiences are very similar and you can spread your word across to different audiences. Building connections, having those relationships. I don't think anything bad really comes from that. You can always, again, everyone's very encouraging. You can use people to be a support system. They can be someone who gets you more clients. There's never really a negative to building relationships and those connections.
Nicole, I think being able to collaborate is easy if you know what your target market is. And let me explain why. I think that what we fear with collaboration is I'm going to lose my client. But if you know who your client is, you're not serving everybody. So you can let go of the ones that are not your ideal client. And so you can collaborate around those things. But I think that's one of the things that's so difficult is really saying, okay, I'm honing down so I can be clear this is what I'm going after. And because the fear is, but what if I don't have enough income? What if I can't grow, right?
Yeah.
Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. So this is something that I think everyone, when they're starting a business, everyone that I've seen has a lot of trouble with is niching down and really figuring out who specifically they're speaking to. But really, I think what you have to keep in mind is when you're trying to speak to everyone, when you're trying to speak to this huge group of people, then you're really speaking to no one because again, it's very general. It's too generic. No one's going to actually connect with it, which means you end up losing money anyways, because you're not actually connecting with anyone on anything specific that they need. But when you can focus on one specific person and what their problem is, you'll realize that your message gets a lot clearer and it hits the right people. And that's going to be the person who is going to be much more loyal to you. They're going to be like, I know that this is the person that I need to work with because you so specifically were basically like reading their mind, kind of like they'll say like, it was like you're in my head, you're like reading my thoughts. And that's kind of more the idea that you want. And there will be more than enough people. Like there's going to be more than one person who has that, that thought.
It is so true. And it's part of that is that sense of being able to be secure and confident in your own self, right? To know that, yeah, you did identify that market for yourself well and being honest about it. And sometimes we don't identify our own target market well. How do you know whether or not you did?
Yeah, I think you really know when people are responding in a positive manner and probably referring other people to you when you kind of start maybe becoming known more as like the go-to person in whatever community that you've really targeted, and your name is being put out there even when you're not necessarily showing up. Other people are kind of your cheerleader and they're putting your name out there and referring you.
Referrals. We all depend upon referrals, don't we? So there is a certain sense of comfort in that, and that is part of what your clients will need to also gain comfort in as they grow and develop. tips, suggestions that you have in developing a referral base?
Yeah, so there are a few things I think you can do. What I like to do with my clients and what I encourage them to do is typically, at the end of our time working together, or, even in the midst of it, I straight up just ask people, like, do you know anyone who would benefit from my services? Can you think of anyone in your network that would benefit from this, and put me in touch with them? So you can really just be upfront and ask, because if you are serving them well and they really appreciate your services and how you've been showing up for them, then I think they'll be very into the idea of referring you to other people. So it just sometimes takes an ask. And there are a few different, once you get a little bit bigger, you can create referral programs. So anyone who's worked with you in the past, they can, if they send out, a discount code to people, and they spread it to their audience, and then those people come in through their audience, and then they get a percentage of whatever that, if they refer someone, they get a percentage of that cut of whatever that new person paid you for.
We don't think so much about services and using codes and bonuses, gifts in that capacity. And yet in the digital world, that is very powerful, isn't it?
Yes.
We all depend upon it a great deal. So back to women, you were talking about some of the challenges that women have, especially if they're staying at home and they've got career responsibilities that they have, plus they're juggling things at home and then trying to start a business. And I think today, in addition to that, many are also doing online schooling. Mm-hmm. But in terms from women in the business world, I just want to go there for a moment. Mm-hmm. We've talked a little bit about confidence that women tend to not have as much of. What are some of the other challenges that if you could say to a woman who's thinking about going into entrepreneur, here are 2 or 3 things, if you just thought about it ahead of time, will make your life so much easier. What would those 2 or 3 things be?
Yeah, so I think planning ahead is extremely important, not only when you have limited time, but also when you are wanting to make sure to keep up that consistency. So planning as much as possible ahead of time, creating things ahead of time, like planning out your week and not doing things on a whim, will really benefit you, because then you're also putting a lot more thought process into what you're doing, and you're having more intentionality and purpose behind what you're doing. And so you're really only spending your time doing the things that are important. And the second thing I would say is, what else can they do to... Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Planning ahead, I think, is hard when you haven't ever done it. So, when something is new, we don't always know the steps, right? And right. I think that's where coaches become so valuable, because they tend to have a sense as to what the steps are. They may not know specific for your business, but they do know generally what the steps are that people go through, and also the roadblocks that we put in our own way. And so I couldn't agree with you more about planning ahead, or finding somebody who has gone down that road and who can be your guide as you go down that road.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's something that, of course, as a coach, I do see the value in it. And I do believe that there is a high value in coaches, especially for people who want to start a business. But obviously, if you don't have that background, if you've never done it before, it's hard to expect someone to be able to do that on their own. And even if you do business school, that doesn't really necessarily prepare you for actually starting your own business. There's a little bit of a different kind of skill set that is needed to do that. And that's where the coaches really come in, who have walked the path before, and again, can really help you focus on the things that matter. And yeah, exactly like you said, see the roadblocks that they're probably going to come up against, probably based on personal experience, but also based on what they've seen other people go through, and really helping you navigate that. And I think as well, just having someone who's there to hold you accountable, to be supporting you through it, it makes you less likely to just give up or fail or just not show up. And, because I think that's a thing, especially in the online space that I see quite frequently is that people create a profile and they start marketing and they start putting their offer out there and then they disappear completely because they just gave up because they weren't seeing results or they weren't focusing on the things that were going to get them results and they just gave up completely. And so the coach is there to really, if you take it seriously, if you really want to start a business and you're very serious about it, then having that coach there will really help you guide you so that you don't end up going back to what you were and staying stuck kind of where you were.
Yeah, that's so true. Being persevering is huge. And discouragement sets in for all of us. I don't think there's a human being that hasn't suffered from that in one way or another. So having a way to move through it. Nicole, we haven't much time left. And so I just want to ask you thoughts, things that we've missed that you think are really important for people to think about as they're starting down a new path, building something new, starting something very different from what their past experience might have been.
Yeah, the only thing I would have to add is just taking action is probably the hardest, but the best thing that you can do to start moving in a different direction. I think a lot of people get caught up in their head and they have all these desires and all these things they want to do, but it's all sitting in their head and they're not actually doing anything towards it. And so just taking the action, just taking a small step toward the thing that you have just even an inkling or a small desire to move into that area. The only way that you're going to not be wondering what if and wondering if it's the right thing for you is by actually doing it and trying it. You can always pivot, change, do something else later on, but you have to take the action to know if that's really for you and what you want to be doing.
Taking action, being in momentum.
Mm-hmm.
Alex Sharfin talks about that a great deal. Just be in momentum. And sometimes you wake up and you go, I don't know, I don't have any energy for momentum. And yet you have to dig in deep, don't you, sometimes to find it.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Nicole, thank you so much for your time today and for your thoughts on business and developing business, digital marketing, especially relative to getting started. And those of you who may be interested in getting in contact with Nicole, information about her will be in our show notes, and you can always contact us as well. So thank you all for being with us today on Building My Legacy podcast. And Nicole, thank you to you.
Yes, thank you so much. I had a great time.
You've been listening to Building My Legacy podcast with Dr. Lois Sonstagard. To book your appointment with Dr. Sonstagard, visit www.buildtomorrow.com.